Ableton Live Suite has got some useful effects for guitar processing. In this video I want to show you how you can build an effects rack. We'll have a quick listen to some examples and then I'll show you how the rack works and finally how you can make it for your music. As mentioned in the intro, these effects are only available in Ableton Live Suite. I'm using Ableton Live 12, so the effects I'm using for this rack are only available in the Suite version. They've got some good effects. We have an amp simulation here, we have some pedal simulations, we have simulations of cabinet types here at the back. Now there's all of these different effects, but how do we combine them together into a usable rack? And that was the purpose of this rack, effectively, to combine these effects. We have some other things. We have a compressor, saturator, some redux for bit reduction, even have a tuner here at the beginning. So I've built all of these things which I thought might be useful within an effect rack for processing guitar tones. At the back we have a limiter, but that's purely just to catch any sort of excessive volumes coming through the rack. So the question was, how do we combine these into an effective rack so that we don't have to go into the weeds here and start tweaking things. We just have some simple controls at the beginning, these 16 controls which allow us to get the tones we want. So let's have a quick listen again then to what we can achieve from the rack. I have here some snapshots I've created. In fact, we can listen to the original loop before it goes through. We heard this in the intro. We have a bass here, which resets effectively all the macros. So let's have a look what we have. We have a reverb. We'll turn that off for a second, which is... Let's go here, we can have a look. We have a hybrid reverb, and in the hybrid reverb, we'll come to this a little bit more, but effectively I've restricted it only to the algorithmic side. I'm not using the convolutions, just to keep it simple. But I'll come to that in a second. I just want to concentrate initially on what we have in the bottom here, which are your typical sort of guitar tones, guitar tone controls. We have control over gain at the very back here, so we can control the gain coming through the rack. We have drive. We can add drive to the circuit. We can treble. Basic EQ, effectively, bass, treble, to adjust the tone. We have saturation. Open up our amp model, close the reverb for a second. So we have saturation, we can add to the tone, and then we have this selection of effectively amp models and cabinet models here, so we can change our model, change our cabinet. Turn off the saturation again. We have a whole selection here, blues. As I say, this rack is really just about combining all these elements together to make it usable. So we can select our amp model, our cabinet model. We can saturate it, drive it. So a whole array of tones are possible. Turn that down a little bit. And then finally on top we have the reverb here. So if we go back here to our clean tone, we have our, let's open our reverb up again. We have our hybrid reverb here. We have control here over the algorithm type. So we can go here to dark hall, quartz, shimmer. We can go through our different types of algorithm. We can adjust our decay, size, basic stuff, dry wet levels, and then we have some additional controls here. We have damping, tide and rate, and these change, these three here change depending on the model that's being used here. So if I adjust this model, you'll see these values here change. Here we have a pitch shift with shimmer, so we can adjust these using these controls here, parameter 1 and 2. Adjust the level, let's turn this down a little. We can adjust the different parameters for each of these algorithms here. So that's basically it. The final control we have is a freeze. So let's see if I can find a more suitable way to demonstrate this. I'll look at our samples. Let's go to guitar. We'll take this one here. Just drop that in. Okay, now we have here, when we're on 0, we have no freeze activated. Let's turn the reverb bit. We have no reverb activated, but you see here there are controls for freeze, and there's also this one here, the arrow is effectively like an overdub function. So when I put this above 1, I have freeze, but the incoming signal isn't added again. If I take this right round to 127 here, then effectively I could, I've got a very simple tone here, but effectively I could add each signal, each incoming signal to the original freeze. So I could, now I just have the frozen tone. Turn it off with that. Okay, so that's what's going on in the rack. All very simple stuff. Say reverb level. I don't think there's too much more to say. Only that some of these, you have the possibility to randomize here. Pressing the RAND button allow you to search for different. That's quite aggressive. Let's try it maybe on a guitar loop. Oh. I can generate random tones here. Some down. Some of them are excluded. I've excluded the gain here. I believe there was another one. We'll come to this in the build more, but some of them are excluded. Could be the reverb decay. No, I'll have a look when we come to the build. But some of them are excluded. Oh, the freeze was excluded, of course. Yeah, this was excluded as well, the drone. And so you can try out different possibilities, see what comes along. If you find one you like, then you just save it here as a new variation. Then you would have to save the rack with anything you've created. Now these racks here, when you click on here, this will appear in your user library. What do we got? Presets, audio effects, audio effect rack. You'll find it in there. I've got it here, guitar rack. So you save your rack, and as I say, if you find a random or any settings of these 16 macros that you enjoy, then you just make a new variation, resave the rack, and you can drop it into whatever project you want. Okay, let's have a look then how it's put together. It's all quite simple. You're going to need an audio effect track. You'll find those here, audio effects, audio effect track. You've just dropped that in. You'll then have this icon here. We can open up the macros. Now these will be named macro 1, 2, 3, 4. I've kept my original names. You can right click here and rename them. And use my names to choose your own, it's your choice. Let's open all of these up. We'll need all 16. Then we'll drop in the effects we're going to need. There's a few, but we'll just go through them very quickly, then we'll set them up. We'll need the tuner. Drop that in here. Close that. Then we'll have the redux here. That will just drop behind the tuner. The saturator here. Then we have the glue compressor here. Then we have the pedal. The amp. Then we have the hybrid reverb. The cabinet. Okay. And finally, at the end, we have a limiter, so we just drop a limiter on the end here. There's quite a few elements. It's what I was saying in the first part of the video. Is how do we combine these to make them all usable without having to go into every one of them. Right, so we'll now go through and we'll set these up very quickly. There's some we don't have to do anything. The tuner we do nothing. The redux, I believe, we do nothing as well. Then let's have a look at the saturator. I think this will all be mapped, so there's nothing. I left it on analog clip. You could choose a different model if you want. That was the one I went for. Let's have a look at the glue compressor. We have some settings here. I set the soft clip on here, and I set the threshold at -17. And the makeup at 6 decibels. The rest I left the same. We can go on to the next one now, which is the pedal. I don't think I set anything up on here. This was, yeah, this is okay. We'll just map a few things here. Then we have the amp. The amp is also nothing to do here. This one here we leave on mono. The rest we will map. And then in the hybrid reverb, have a few things to do here. I set the pre-delay to 5 milliseconds. You can play with this value if you want. There wasn't, unfortunately, enough macros to map it here. I selected here the algorithm. We'll only be using that model. And the stereo I turned off completely. I made it a mono signal. The dry, wet, and all of these we will map. So there's nothing to do there. So that's set up. Okay, then we have the cabinet here. There's nothing to do on that one. So that's everything set up initially. So we can go through now and do our mapping. So we'll open these up. Actually, we'll start with the reverb because that's the easiest. Everything's available at the top. So we just go into our mapping here, click here, the map. We'll take this algorithm button and map it here. Then we have the reverb decay. here, the reverb size here, the reverb damping, this control here. Parameter 1 is this first parameter here, shape. As I mentioned before, when you change the algorithm here, these will all change. So parameter 2, reverb parameter 2 is the second one here. We'll map that. Then we have the freeze. So we want both of these. We want the arrow mapped here, and also the little frozen star. We'll map that one to the same, and we'll set these constraints up in a minute. I'll put a screenshot up, and you can punch in all the numbers you need, all the values you need here to set up the rack. Okay, what else do we have? We have the dry wet. Take that and we'll map that here. So then what we have to do now is we have to change our, because these values change, we have to go back and we have to change our algorithm. So we move this very slowly until we see them change, and then we'll map this one again. This one's parameter 1, this one parameter 2, and then we repeat this. Keep moving it up. Parameter 1, parameter 2, move up again. Parameter 1 and parameter 2. Okay, and it should, maybe there's one more, I believe. Yeah, so this one, it has a different function here to the damping, but I left it as damping because the majority have damping. This one has a low multi value, but we'll map that one also to this reverb damping here. And the high multi will map here to parameter 1, and the X crossover to parameter 2. Now my tip is, when you're using this rack, you might have noticed in the intro I had the reverb open and the amp open, these two open, so that I can adjust these parameters and see. So if I did come here to this final algorithm, then where we have the low multi, then I would see that in. So that's my tip when you're using the rack, have these two open. But okay, that's all the reverb now set up. So we can come out of the reverb. Next one we will go to then is the amp. And we have the amp model, which is this bar here. We just click on this and we can map that here to the amp model. Then we have the cabinet, which is the speaker here. And a note here as well, I didn't change any of these. You have different types of microphone position. You could set this up how you want. I just chose the near on axis. Okay, so let's go back to the amp again. So we'll take this gain control here, and we will map that to the gain here, the bass to the bass, middle to the middle, and treble to the treble. I didn't use the presence control. I also left that unmapped. You could come in if you wanted to adjust that. Okay, so that's the amp mapped. We can come out of this one and out of the cabinet. We don't need that. Then we'll go to the pedal here. And in the pedal, I used only the OD. I didn't map this. This hasn't been mapped. Just to explain, I only used the overdrive function. I didn't use these. So if you wanted to come in and select these, you can. What I did map though was the gain here and the output. So we'll map those to our drive here. So this gain I map here to the drive, and this output I also map to the drive. And then we will set these values up as I mentioned once we come to the constraints. Okay, there were two other things I also mapped to the drive. So we'll come out of here. The glue compressor, we do not need to map anything. That's set up. The redux, we can take here the rate and map that to our drive. And the bit depth as well. We'll map those two. I added these to add a little bit of grittiness to the drive, some additional grittiness. Okay, so what else do we have? Just the saturator, I believe. And here I took the drive and mapped that to the saturate. And I also took the output and mapped that also to saturate here. This will become clear, I say, once we set these up. And I believe that's everything now mapped. So I'll say I'll put a screenshot up, 2 screenshots actually, and you can go through these values, make sure they're identical to the screenshots, and then everything should be set up. You'll notice what I do with things where, as in this example here, where I put we have the saturator here, I have the drive and the output on the same control, and you'll see these values when they're set up here, that as you increase drive, I set it up so you reduce the output. I've had to balance the whole signal level through the whole rack, so a lot of these values concentrate on that. Anyway, so I'll put the screenshots up, and then you can punch it in, and I'll see you on the other side, and then we can just test the rack, make sure everything's working okay. Okay, so there weren't so many to change. You just have to be careful, as I mentioned, with anything that affects output here. Make sure that these values are correct. I think there's a couple more up here. This one here, anything to do with output. As I said, I had to balance the levels through the rack. So just be careful, make sure they're correct. Okay then, so we can maybe try one of the snapshots here. As I mentioned, you save the rack here. I showed you where it will be saved. Snapshots you just create once you get your macros in a position you like. You just create a new snapshot, and then you need to resave the rack to make sure they're not lost. I tend to have the reverb and the amp opened, as I mentioned, so that I can see those. Let's try. See if it works. Can we change it? Okay. Let's see it. Algorithm's changing it. Can we adjust? Let's have a look at just this. Can we adjust the parameters? Distance here, moving. Okay, so freeze work. Yes. And if we go to this one, that just keeps adding the signal to it, so that seems to be fine. Okay, we have the amp model down here then. Sure that's okay. Yeah, that's moving on. Blues, we can saturate the signal, drive the signal, adjust our gain here. Okay, everything seems to be working okay. Just to recall, you need to right-click exclude this one here, the freeze from randomization, and also the gain here. I excluded those two. The drive I kept. The rest is okay, so you should be able to. You could right-click and have this excluded as well, the reverb decay if you want. There's many things, or the dry-wet level. It's up to you how you set those up. Yeah, let's go to. Yeah, I hope this has been useful as always, and yeah, I'll see you in the next video then. Take care. Thank you.